But this is a very sad situation. Just after midnight last night in an extremely rural part of Polk County, a place where you'd never expect there to be a crash at all, much less a multiple fatality, we had a tragedy of monumental proportions. This tragedy of monumental proportions dealt with the loss of life by mom and dad and a 5-year-old baby that was sitting in the front seat. The children in the back seat was a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, which were airlifted to Arnold Palmer in Orlando in extremely critical condition. And then there was an infant. The only one that was secured in a car seat is okay. That child was transported to be checked out at Lakeland Regional Medical Center. But we see evidence where these folks were shopping in Orlando. The last purchase was in the area of 11 p.m. on the 10th of March. They were on their way back to Dade City where they lived, traveling on a small 2-lane rural road through a very quiet area of the Green Swamp, when for reasons unknown, the driver, the children's dad, failed to stop at the stop sign at Highway 33 and ran underneath a semi-trailer. The trailer dragged the vehicle approximately 500 feet to its resting spot. Deputies, firefighters, EMS arrived on the scene, but despite their valiant efforts, there was no way to save the lives of mom and dad and the 5-year-old in the front seat. The 2 children in the back seat need all of our prayers because they're in extremely critical condition, and it is yet to be determined whether or not they will survive the crash. Next of kin's been notified. DCF has come in to assist and currently has possession of the infant, which is the only one that was not injured in the crash. The infant was the only one wearing seatbelts. None of the others were wearing seatbelts. The investigation is underway by the Sheriff's Office traffic homicide investigators. There doesn't appear to be any alcohol-related or drug-related, at least from the current observations. However, as you know, we'll go through the appropriate medical tests to make that final determination. Any questions?
I know some of the family and friends were saying it was pretty foggy out there. Did you hear that from any of the first responders, that might have been a reason?
I didn't hear that, but this time of year, it's not uncommon to have fog in the lower lying areas of the county, and certainly the Green Swamp would qualify as that. But these fog banks move in and out. So quite frankly, there may have been fog when the crash occurred, and the fog bank could have been gone by the time we got there. Or it could have been a clear night when the crash occurred, and the fog moved in by the time the family or we got there. So at the end of the day, we don't know about those conditions, but we'll be checking. That's part of the traffic homicide investigative report.
Sheriff, there's been some talk about that stoplight, solar-powered stoplight above the stop sign there. Can you tell us anything new about that? Can you tell us anything?
The traffic homicide investigators determined upon their arrival that the flashing yellow light, I'm sorry, let me say that again. I don't know if it was yellow or red light.
It's a red light.
That the flashing light was not working on the top of the stop sign. So we immediately called the county to make sure that that light was repaired before we opened the roadway back up to traffic. But quite frankly, that could have been a causation, the fact that the light wasn't flashing. But despite that, the stop sign was in place and it's reflective, and certainly It's not normal practice to have a flashing light on every stop sign. So human nature is you should stop at the stop sign with or without the flashing light. It's also interesting to note that the driver of the vehicle didn't have a valid driver's license. His license had been suspended. So as tragic as this is, and this is certainly, when a tragedy is this bad, to find fault with the father and the driver is difficult. But had he been following the law and not operating the motor vehicle, another driver could have been in that seat and drove through that stop sign, but it certainly wouldn't have been him had he been following the law.
I'm just curious, is it under the Sheriff's Department jurisdiction to check lights like that? I understand that you said it's, the sign was there, the traffic, notice was there anyway. But
Right.
Is that your jurisdiction to check that, or is that the county,
Okay.
transportation, or?
County traffic is responsible for the lights working, but certainly if our deputies notice that a traffic light isn't working, they report it to traffic. So no, it's not a duty and responsibility for us to go around and make sure traffic devices are in place. But it is a custom that if we find a traffic device has been knocked down, isn't working, that we notify traffic so that they can immediately respond to repair that.
I mean, is that when they traditionally would put a flashing marker on it, when you've got a lengthy, long drive like that at maybe higher rates of speed, to kind of say, wow, he's been driving for a long time, get ready, there's going to be a stop sign in the middle of nowhere.
I'm not a traffic engineer, but I can tell you that I came through an intersection the other day for the first time, and they had built an extension on the road. Well, when you're driving down the road and you see this pristine road in front of you, if you're not familiar with the area, you just think it's an extension of the road. You don't necessarily pay attention to the cross intersection. And I notified county engineering that they needed to come out and take a look at that road because it looked to me that a flashing stoplight would help. Well, that can very well be the case at this particular intersection. It is a long stretch of road, and it's broken up by Highway 33, which has a speed limit there of probably 55 to 60 miles an hour. So certainly if people are just doing the speed limit, we would be happy. But normally if it's 55, they're driving close to 65, and if it's 60, they're driving close to 70. Well, if you're coming through this area late at night and you're not familiar with the roadway, then if you don't see the stop sign, and it was clearly marked, he should have seen the stop sign, but if you're looking past the stop sign, it looks like a straight, long road. And certainly it's broken up by this very fast two-lane road called Highway 33 North, State Road 33 North. So, at the end of the day, it was late at night. They'd been shopping. They were probably tired. And for whatever reason, he didn't see the stop sign. And as I said before, it's not customary to have a flashing light on every stop sign. But the stop sign was there. It was properly erected. It reflects light. He should have seen it. We don't know why he missed it. Certainly he didn't do that as an intentional act. There's absolutely no evidence to indicate that at this point in our investigation. And it breaks your heart. And not only do you have children now that are deceased that don't have their parents, they're in critical condition in the hospital fighting for their own life. And you've got an infant that's going to grow up without their mother and father. That's why we are very, very clear when we ask people, wear your seatbelts. Don't drink and drive. Obey the speed limits. Pay attention to traffic control devices, because the chances are the people that see this television broadcast will have never seen a serious crash. If they have, they've probably never seen a crash with a fatality. But once you see a terrible vehicle crash with a fatality, much less multiple fatalities, and one of them being a 5-year-old baby, it changes your life forever. And if the people in the community could see what our law enforcement officers and my traffic homicide investigators see every day, they would drive much more cautiously.
Sure. I saw at least one memorial marker out there that appeared to have been there for a while. So it's possible that there was at least one other fatal crash there, in the past. Do you think it might be prudent to consider getting a traffic light installed there?
There are a lot of roads that interstate. Let me say that again. There are a lot of roads that intersect Highway 33 North. If you put a traffic light at each one of those, you would have a huge amount of traffic lights without an appreciable amount of traffic. Our traffic engineers and all traffic engineers are cognizant of and try to mark the areas very clearly. When you're at a small 2-lane road in a desolate part of the county that goes through the green swamp, the traffic volume probably doesn't warrant a traffic light there. But at the same time, the stop signs were there and they were in place. And had he stopped for the stop sign, then the crash wouldn't have occurred. But and I know, people drive vehicles every day, and occasionally, for whatever reason, they don't see traffic lights. They don't see stop signs. They don't see traffic control devices, and they make mistakes. Unfortunately, early this morning, it was a fatal traffic mistake.